the 49ers do here?
Well, Skip, I believe they moved up from 12-3 in order to take Mac Jones. But there was a month in between, and they kind of talked themselves out of it. Skip, I've had my own car since I was about 19. Brother bought me my first car that I own myself since I was 19. And since then, I'm almost a couple of months short of 53. I've never test driven a car. Because I know if I get there and I test drive one and I test drive the other one, it's going to, I know what I want, I go pick it up. I said, look, I'm coming, I'm getting this car, but I'm driving off the lot with it. So I don't test drive. And what the 49ers did, Skip, they test drove another car. They ended up going to see Trey Lance. They asked John Beck to put him through some drills, let him get familiarize himself with a system. And they saw him, and they're like, okay, wow. And that's what happened. I believe, you believe that when they made this, if they make this trade on draft night, Mac Jones is the selection. But you had a month. I believe they talked themselves out of Mac Jones. I honestly, after sitting here and it's like, it's close, it's 50-50.
Have you heard anything from the inside about that?
I have not heard from the inside.
Obviously, you being close to Mike Shannon.
Close to Mike, very close to Mike. I have not heard anything from inside, and that's what's so intriguing. Because normally, you get a sense, but the one thing we do know is that when the needle starts moving in another direction, Skip, it normally doesn't stop. And the needle is kind of moving faster towards Trey Lance than I think Mac Jones would even like. If you make me say now, I don't know what the odds are. Fox Bet might have moved the odds, but I'm saying there's a 55-60% chance that Trey Lance is going to be that selection instead of Mac Jones. And I believe if you had when they made the trade, what was it, 3 weeks ago, a month ago, I believe Mac Jones. I believe they made that trade with Mac Jones in mind because he reminds them of Matt Ryan. He reminds them of Kirk Cousins. And they know what they're getting with that style, Skip. There ain't no, I wonder what could he be. You know exactly what you're going to get with Matt Ryan. You know exactly what you're going to get with Kirk Cousins. But in this offense, and to expand it, and to have some of the design runs like a Kyler Murray, design runs like a Mar Jackson, you're going to get more bang for your buck with Trey Lance. But to throw the ball and just run the offense in its truest sense, Mac Jones is the better fit. But to open the playbook, as Bucky Brooks says, to expand it, I believe, if you want to expand the playbook, those two guys, Justin Fields and Trey Lance, will give you more bang for your buck if you want to expand the playbook. But to run the offense like he read it in Atlanta, to run the offense like he read it with Cousins, Mac Jones is a better fit. So I believe they take Trey Lance because I believe he wants to expand it.
Okay. So the man I call Shannon Shanahan, because you're so close to both the Shanahans, is now publicly saying that they are about to make the wrong pick. Isn't that what you just said? You just laid it on the table. You would take Mac Jones. They have talked themselves out of Mac Jones and into Trey Lance to their detriment.
Let me tell you what I believe both of these guys believe. They believe they can take the wrong guy and still be a great decision because they have so much confidence in their ability to coach him up, and they have so much confidence in that system. That's what they believe. Because, Skip, like you said, you look at it over the years after John Elway, the selections that they've made, you like Brian Griese, but Brian Griese threw for 4,000 yards and went to a Pro Bowl.
He also went 27 and 24 as Mike Shanahan's starting quarterback.
Yes.
And then he tried Jake Plummer, and he was good in the regular season and terrible in the post.
Right.
And then he tried Jay Cutler, and he was a sub-500 quarterback and finally got Mike fired.
I think, Skip, Mike loved Jake Plummer because he says, you know what, I can expand the playbook. I got a guy that got legs. I can run naked boots. I can run him on design runs, and we can get more bang for our buck. But the inconsistency, the accuracy was a problem. So he says, you know what, and that's why Kyle Shanahan, if you ask Kyle, the number one thing he's going to say is accuracy. But the question is, are you willing to sacrifice some accuracy in order to expand and get more bang for your buck with either Fields or Trey Lance? I know what you would do.
I have been on record for about 3 weeks on this show. I would go Trey Lance at number 3. And I was saying that before it was fashionable. And now it seems like there's a runaway train for Trey Lance at number 3, which is shocking to me. And yet, I also told you from the start that if there hadn't been runaway buzz about these two guys, the Shanahans, trading up for Mac Jones, I don't think anybody else would have talked about Mac Jones as a top 5-ish pick.
Right.
I think he would have been looked at as a mid-round pick, mid-first round. And now Todd McShay just came out with his latest mock, and he's got him falling down to, where was it? He's got him all the way down to going to New England at 15. Okay? That would make sense to me. He also could go 19th to the Washington football team, which probably still is in the market for a quarterback if they don't have to pay too much to trade up. So there'll be several teams lurking in the middle of the first round saying, is Mac Jones going to fall in our lap? Okay, so I was on record as of yesterday. We went back and forth about Mac Jones. And what have I always said from the start? Tape does not lie.
Correct.
And you threw that back at me as watch the tape on Mac Jones because it's spectacular.
It is.
He does little to nothing wrong. Yet I would tell you, if you looked harder at said tape, even though the results are sensational, the results they're not quite Joe Burrow all-time statistically, but they're close.
They're close.
77% completion percentage.
And that 96 QBR is unheard of.
It's unheard of. I got you. By the way, Justin Fields was 92, and any other year, we'd be talking about Justin Fields. If there weren't a Trevor Lawrence, we'd be saying Justin Fields should be the first overall pick. But on Mac Jones, when I say tape doesn't lie, the Mac Jones I saw, I'm doing TV tape, so I'm just watching the games, eye testing on TV. I didn't see special. I didn't see big arm because he's got the weakest of the 5 top arms. And not that it's weak, it's just a little below average for the NFL. I found the release to be not that quick, but he is clearly somewhat to a whole lot a product of what was around him in skill, talent, and in protection. They were both supreme, right?
Yeah.
So Devontae Smith took over college football. He took over the national championship game. He won the Heisman Trophy. He could get open on anybody at any moment. He could, as they say, separate like nobody could separate because he was such an explosive, great route runner that he toyed with anybody who tried to cover him, whether it was double or triple coverage. He separated from it. And Mac Jones could trust on every read that if he were the first read, he was just going to get open. So to me, if I take Mac Jones out of that and pull him out and try to put him in my eye test vacuum, he doesn't live up to the other 4 in just pure ability or strength in the pocket or even pocket poise. Sometimes he'd get a little jittery. And I thought he could maneuver pretty well, and I thought he could escape a little bit and sometimes be a little bit elusive when he was running for a first down. But he's not the athlete the other 4 are.
No, Skip, in order for him to run, you got to double dare him. These other guys, we saw Trevor Lawrence, Skip, they ran him in the national championship game against Ohio State, and he ran for over 100 yards. So we know he has legs. We know Justin Fields. We know Trey Lance. Mac Jones, of all the guys, he's the last. He's going to use running as a last resort. Even if he escapes the pocket, he's looking to push the ball down the field. But what I love most about him, Skip, if you look at the yards after the catches, receivers, all that has to do with the quarterback. Because there's a difference between a 12-yard completion, you throw the ball, the guy catches and fall down, you hit the guy in stride, he gets a 25-yard gain. That's a huge difference. You look at his pinpoint accuracy. 7 of his 13 games, Skip, he threw for 385 and 70% completion. A&M, Florida, Georgia, Ohio State. Are those teams any good? How many first-round picks, second-round picks you think Ohio State, Georgia, Florida, and A&M are going to have? Well, that's what he did against their defenses.
Okay, but I can also argue Alabama just might have been the greatest football team ever assembled in college football. It might have been.
they were good.
They're loaded everywhere with NFL but talent, like top-level talent.
Yes.
With NFL starters. They're all around everywhere. So he got protected, and he had open receivers. And he had Najee Harris, who's going to go probably later in the first round, very likely to Pittsburgh as the top running back. I kind of favor ETN a little bit just on his explosive speed, but Najee Harris is a stud back. He can catch it. He's 230. And he could run. He could make holes.
Well, they better not let Najee Harris go to Tampa Bay. Can you imagine with his ability to run the football and catch the football in Tampa?
Man, they're loaded. They got playoff Lenny and Rojo and Gio.
Well, I just hope
I
hope he's going off the board before then, because I don't want to find out.
What about my little man Keyshawn Vaughn from Vanderbilt? They're just loaded. I don't know where else. I'm not sure Najee can make the team. I'm not sure he can make the team. Seriously. So the point is, now we get to Justin Fields. And he's always factored out of these debates and conversations. And what I love about Trey Lance, and by the way, we're going to have him on later. Okay. I know he's been on a number of shows, but we've got some questions for him.
Sure.
And I still have some questions. Obviously, he came from small town Minnesota, about 150 miles west of Minneapolis. Right. University of Minnesota said no to him as a quarterback, which just drives me out of his mind. And it drives him to be great.
Great.
And he goes to North Dakota State just to have the chance to play quarterback, and they redshirted him as a freshman. Right. And he turned into a film junkie. And he is as dedicated to the process of playing football, playing quarterback at the highest level as any college kid I've ever heard of before, where he is obsessed with it the way a Brady or Peyton were or have been obsessed with it. So I love his intangibles, along with the measurables are off the charts. We're talking about 6'4", 225, runs 4.5, will run over people. He won't be able to do that in the NFL consistently.
Not for long.
But he is a runner by nature. He's got natural running ability, and yet he's got the big arm. He's got a quick lightning release. And remember, they let him run the offense from under center the way Peyton Brady often do, where you set your own protection, you read it, he's going second and third options, he's audibling, and they gave him the whole offense on the field. They let him be the coordinator on the field. Well, I can argue that in football IQ, he's ahead of the other kids right now, even ahead of Trevor Lawrence. And yet I don't have a body of work and I don't have competition. Right. He's the flip side of Mac Jones. I got FCS competition.
Right. Skip, but you heard some of the general managers. You heard Jerry says, if it's close, I'm going to go with the guy that played as opposed to the guy that opted out. And you're starting to hear a groundswell of that. So how close is it between Mac Jones, Trey Lance, and Justin Fields? And do other general managers that are in that spot that's going to be selected, do they feel like Pittsburgh GM? Do they feel like Jerry Jones? Because Jerry says a guy that opted out, he missed 700 snaps. He's like, well, so
but Trey Lance didn't opt out of his own will. You know, they just didn't play.
Right.
So he played one game last year against Central Arkansas. What do you do with that?
Skip, you keep saying he threw, 28 touchdowns with 0 interceptions.
0 interceptions.
But Mac Jones was 41-4. That ain't bad, Skip. 41 touchdowns with 4 picks. And playing against the level of competition that he's playing against night in and night out. And I understand, Skip, you have to have, there's no denying. He's at some point in time in his career, he threw the 4 first-round receivers.
Yep.
He did do that. He had 3, he's going to have 3 or 4 first-round offensive linemen go in the, last 2 drafts. But
remember, what's Mel Kiper say about Trey Lance? As fascinating and difficult an evaluation as I've ever encountered in all my years doing this. Well, I agree. Yes. So I get right to the finish line on Trey Lance, but if you throw back at me, what's his body of work? Right. I got 16 games in 2019. Right. I got 16, and they're great games. Against who? Against, I don't know. Right. But he won the national championship without throwing a single interception. He talks about how his priority on the football field is do not turn the football over. How many young quarterbacks have that in their head as their priority? Right. None.
Skip, it's just that when I look at it, you can make the same argument for Joe Burrow. Joe Burrow didn't have a whole lot of games. I mean, you look at it the year before, Skip, he was bad.
Yep.
Joe Burrow was bad.
Okay, but what did your eye test tell you when you watched him on TV versus Mac Jones? He just looked better than me. He's a little bigger. He plays stronger in the pocket. He's more athletic. He's got a little bigger arm than this kid did. Remember, this kid, a lot of times, not a lot, but a few times, he would just underthrow balls to Devontae, and it just didn't matter because Devontae was so open deep.
You know what I love most about Mac Jones? Even though he knew Jalen Hurts, even though he knew Tua was coming to Alabama, he says, I'm going to compete.
Okay. Well,
I'm going to compete.
All right.
Skip, how many times you see guys that normally you look at the Alabama guys, the running backs, there's 3 other 5-star recruits going there. You look at the receivers, you already know they got 3 5-star recruits and 2 more coming in. You go there and compete. He says, you know what? He could have left. He could have easily left, Skip.
Okay.
He said, no, I'm going to wait my time.
Okay, so are you going to dock Justin Fields for not being able to beat out Jake Fromm?
No.
Because he tried and failed for whatever reason. It wasn't his call. It was the coaching staff.
Right.
It was Kirby Smart and company calling
I want to
that.
hear what Kirby Smart has to say about Justin Fields. We keep asking Ryan Day, but Kirby Smart did coach this young man for a year. He did have him in this system for a year, and nobody has said what Kirby Smart. I know what Ryan Day has said. Ryan Day said he's been a pleasure to coach. You can throw all you want to throw at him, and he'll be able to handle it. He's tough as nails. What is Kirby? Does anybody ask Kirby Smart? Can we get Kirby Smart on record? What does he think about Justin Fields? Skip, they were the top two guys in the country for the longest of times, and they're about 35, 40 miles apart from each other. One's born in Kennesaw, Harrison, went to Harrison County. The other went to Cartersville. So, and now all of a sudden it seems like the gap is the length of the Nile River between Trevor Lawrence and Justin Fields. To hear people talk about it, I'm like, well, damn, how did he get so exponentially better in 3 years?
Thank you for watching. You can subscribe here to get the latest from the show, and be sure to check out more of the best clips from Undisputed, or go watch a few other segments from our other shows on FS1.